Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from today. My name's Rob Webb. I'm the CEO of AFAC, and thanks for joining us today at the Collaborative Pathways event, Enhancing Community Outcomes Together, the masterclass sponsored by Stewart & Heaton Clothing Company. So as I mentioned, I'm from AFAC, obviously very busy across all parts of Australia at the moment. So I acknowledge the lots of work that's happening in Queensland and thank them for making the time to do this amongst this very busy operational period. And our thoughts are going out to both communities and also emergency services who are supporting those communities. I'd like to begin by paying my respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of the land. I'm coming to you from the Boonwurrung people on the shores of Port Phillip Bay here in Melbourne, but also as a Trans-Tasman organisation, we recognise Maori as the Tangata Whenua and Treaty of Waitangi partners in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and can I acknowledge and extend my respects to Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander and the Maori people of New Zealand who are joining us online today. Stewart & Heaton have been really great partners of AFAC for since 2018, sponsoring masterclasses and really driving forward key issues in the community. In 2023, Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, who are now the Queensland Fire Department, they were awarded the AFAC People First Award, and Julianne Webster-Scott, who's joining us here today, and her team's work on initiatives around regional community engagement. And that's really heavily in our minds as we reflect on some of the catastrophic disasters around the world, both recently LA, the Valencia floods, and also the Maui fires. It's in our minds in those catastrophic disasters, but in every disaster is the importance of engagement and working with communities. So recognising the work of Julianne and her team is an important way that we support members to showcase wider ideas and actually support collaboration, but penetration of new ideas and new ways of working. So it allows many other organisations to learn from the Queensland Fire Department, and hopefully we can all accelerate our paths forward to keep up with what the environment's doing to us at the moment. Without the support of Stewart & Heaton Clothing Company, we wouldn't be able to showcase QFD's work. We'd like to thank them for their support over the last 8 years. We really hope we can continue with this, working with them into the future. And on that note, I'd like to hand over to Simon Stewart, the founder and managing director of Stewart & Heaton, and ask him to say a few words.
Thank you, Rob. And good morning to you all from Western Australia. It's a great pleasure to speak to you this morning about our involvement in the AFAC People First Award. As many of you would know, Stewart & Heaton are manufacturers and suppliers of personal protective clothing and specialist uniforms to police, fire and emergency services right across Australia. In 2018, we celebrated our 25th year in operation, and rather than hold a party to commemorate the milestone, we looked to see how we could give back to our customers and make a positive and enduring contribution to the sector. Following some discussions with AFAC, we settled on the Leading Practice in Mental Health Award. This award was subsequently renamed the People First Award to align with AFAC's Strategic Directions number 4, Safe, Capable and Diverse Workforce. A key condition of our sponsorship was that the learnings of the winning agency would be shared right across the emergency services sector. So I'm delighted to see a very large registration for this masterclass. Yeah. Congratulations again to the Queensland Fire Department team, and I hope you all have a productive and enjoyable session. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to Rob and Simon for that very warm welcome. So as you've just been introduced, my name is Julianne Webster-Scott. I have blonde shoulder-length hair, dark reading glasses, and today I'm wearing a green shirt. I am the Regional Community Engagement Coordinator for the Queensland Fire Department for the Rockhampton Division in Central Region. I'm absolutely delighted to be your host for this session, also a speaker today. So we'll introduce the other speakers and the panel members very shortly. But before we do, we just want to run through some housekeeping for today's event. So today's event will be recorded and made available along with presentation slides after the event. So today we will be using the Q&A feature on Zoom to take questions. So please pop your questions into the Q&A box, not the chat window, please. You will be able to upvote questions by clicking the thumbs up button, and we will do our best to ask a number of the questions to our speakers following the presentation. I encourage you all to use the chat window, share any thoughts or reflections during the presentations. And just a reminder that you need to select all panelists and attendees in the drop-down menu for everyone attending today to view your messages. I'd also like to remind you, please be respectful to each other and our presenters when posting your comments and questions. Today, your videos and mics are active. So I'll just ask you to mute your mics now and feel free to turn your cameras off if you wish. So let's start our journey. So picture this. A wildfire is advancing towards a small, diverse community. The sky is turning orange. The air is thick with smoke. It's stinging your eyes. It's getting harder to breathe. It's getting hotter and hotter. Emergency services are responding, but the clock is ticking and resources are stretched thin. Smoke alarms are sounding, but there's no noise from the birds. Families are scrambling to understand what is happening and what they need to do. The streets are clogged with cars. People are panicking and yelling at each other. Now, imagine the same situation with a critical difference. Long before the fire began, every community member had access to the same information. They've been part of inclusive planning efforts and knew exactly what steps to take. Leaders from every background work together to ensure everyone, regardless of language, culture, resources, were all prepared. What's the result? Families act decisively, misinformation is minimalised, confusion and anxiety are lessened, and our first responders can focus on the most urgent needs. So the question is, the next slide, please, and the following one. So the question is, how can we build this level of collaboration and preparedness to ensure every community member is equipped to face emergencies like these? So I want to ask for you to ask yourself, what does that mean for you in your role? What's it mean for your people, your stakeholder partner agencies, and your communities? So how do we get the right message to your communities in the right format at the right time? So what's your plan? So next slide, please. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. As I said, my name is Julianne. I'm absolutely happy to be hosting from Darumbaland here in Rockhampton. So feel free to pop in the chat where you're coming from today. Once again, thank you, Rob and Simon. The dedication your organisations show to the community for their safety and wellbeing is just wonderful. It's a privilege to have this opportunity to share our experiences about community engagement and the importance of collaboration. So just a little bit of background. I've been with the Queensland, now known as Queensland Fire Department, for coming on 19 years and absolutely have thoroughly enjoyed my time here. So why do we do what we do? Personally, I want to make a difference. I want to make sure that the community has all the tools and the information that they need to make informed decisions for their own safety. Basically, I think my aim is to put myself out of a job, making sure that everyone has the tools and both the mental and physical well-being that they need to be safe. So what we are going to be covering today, we're going to be talking about the importance of collaboration with our people, our partners, and our communities. We're going to share those stories about collaboration. We're going to talk about what worked, what can be enhanced in the future. We'll also talk about some specific pilot projects that we did Queensland-wide with the Australian warning system. And then 2 specific case studies, one with people living with a disability and one with a multicultural community. We're going to be joined after those short presentations by a panel of our people who were involved in those pilot projects, representing our people, our partners and our communities. And at the end, we will delve into experiences and challenges and learnings that we gather from you all here today. So a bit of a background, who is the Queensland Fire Department? Next slide, please. So we've had a lot of changes in our world. July 1 last year, we become a new department called Queensland Fire Department. We were known as Queensland Fire and Emergency Services prior to that. And the key difference is that we had also in our department, the State Emergency Service. So 2024, just want to give you a bit of an idea about the types of calls and the organisation, what our roles and the jobs that we have. So we're looking at, we had 75,000 000 calls. We managed over 4,000 vegetation fires, 2,000 structural fires, 3,000 hazmat incidents, and 50,000 other calls such as swiftwater rescues, fires, explosions. We also deployed people to Papua New Guinea and Canada and Victoria. And we had 1.1 million people visiting our bushfire warnings and incidents website. Next slide, please. So this is Queensland. So just to give you a bit of an idea, we have an area of 1,727,000 square kilometres. So this makes Queensland Australia's 2nd largest state. So give you a bit of an idea, it's nearly 5 times the size of Japan, 7 times the size of Great Britain, and 2.5 times the size of Texas. Queensland's home to 5.5 million people and is the most decentralised state with more than half of the population living outside of the capital city. We have 1/3 of Queenslanders are migrants or children of migrants, and more than 1 in 5 residents were born overseas. There's over 2,000 national parks in Queensland covering 6.5 million hectares. And Queensland is the most disaster-prone state. So just currently, we talked about what's happening in the world. Queensland at the moment is experiencing significant ongoing flooding impacting the northeast Queensland. We've got 12 flood warnings current as we speak now. In Queensland, it's not unusual to have floods, heat waves, fires and severe weather happening within the state at the one time. So now, given this vast nature of Queensland, how do we implement community engagement strategies in this massive landscape? We'll just pop to the next slide. So this is a little job for you. So as we listen to the speakers going through, we're asking you if you could get your phones out, click on this link and answer 3 little questions. So we're going to ask you about your experiences and learnings about challenges in community engagement. And then in the last session, we will discuss some of those challenges and learnings that have been taken from this cohort. So we'll be talking today about the importance of collaboration, diversity, and our engagement, which makes us have informed decisions. So we'll pop on to the next slide. So what does community engagement mean to us at QFD, Queensland Fire Department? We're going to hear from some of our people now in this video.
Well, great engagement is empowering communities, and that's about reaching people where they are, tailoring messaging so that it reaches the right people in the right ways, and utilising local community organisations and authorities to help amplify our messages to get the right information to people so that they can prevent, they can act and they can recover.
Genuine community engagement is about co-designing products and services with our community and the people we serve, because that empowers them to take ownership of their personal safety. And that just increases, the sustainability and efficiency of our business.
We're bringing the community in, we're wanting to understand their perspective and their thoughts on it, and then co-designing and tailoring opportunities to support that community with their own ideas.
So it's about actually making a difference and, helping a community become more self-reliant and take home those messages that they will, remain safe.
We're able to inform and educate the community of what the fire service is all about, primarily operational, but all the corporate and strategic things and departments that go on in the background.
Partnerships are so important to support our community engagement because it means that we get to bring in organisations or people with special expertise, skills, things that we may not have access to already, to add more and more value to what we're doing with projects in community.
By tapping into those relationships, it gives us an access to a community that we mightn't necessarily have.
Within the Mackay and surrounding areas, we had a bit of an uptake of, during the winter period, of some of within the homeless, a lot of fire setting that was occurring to keep warm around the tents and or within other shelters. And we had an influx of calls and people putting themselves into danger. So just by a matter of going around to these community groups within their own time and just integrating with them, we're able to provide a good fire safety message to them and also be a port of call for them into the future.
We identified a number of aged care facilities within the Brisbane region who were in high-risk areas for bushfire. We then partnered with our agencies like QPS and local council, and we went to each of those aged care facilities and took the time to sit down with those managers and make sure that they were adequately prepared and had a plan, but also so that we could prepare.
So we know that by working together, we can have a much greater reach and achieve greater outcomes.
Community solving their own problems is the best type of community engagement because they know they're the experts in their own lives.
Thanks for that. So why do we engage? So we are involved in community engagement through the whole cycle of disaster management, through preparedness, prevention, response, and recovery. So some of the little examples of what we do there in preparedness, we're helping people to be prepared for events. So you're looking at community education, engagement activities. Through the prevention side of it, we're working with communities to reduce the effects of the events, such things as bushfire mitigation activities. Through the response, it's clear, timely informations and warnings through all the different means and methods of the communication channels that we can tap into. The recovery phase, we engage during this because we need to identify future needs. We need to find out what had happened during response and how we can help the community to be more ready for the next one. So we do that by providing advice. We help put strategies into place, looking at community profiling, what's the makeup of the community, what's their communication channels that they use. We also, what other stakeholders are in the match? Who do we need to engage with so that we have a collaborated, combined effort? And you have operational support, such as in your public information unit and the whole realm of roles that go with that. So we'll pop on to the next slide, please. So who makes up the engagement team in QFD? Everyone has a role. Every single person, staff, volunteer has a role in community engagement. We have some sort of specialised roles that assist everyone to have the tools and the training that they need. So within our region, within our state, we have 8 community engagement coordinators into 4 regions. So there's some other specialist roles that are in there as well. We have some volunteer community educators. So they're local people in their local communities engaging and educating their communities to give them the tools to make those safe, informed decisions. They can be deployed in operations throughout the state and throughout Australia and also overseas. It's an important part of that community liaison component of operations. We also have what we call triple F practitioners. They're fight, fire, fascination practitioners. So working with young children that have demonstrated some fire setting behaviours and trying to reduce that that effect on that. We have RAP coordinators, so that's road accidents and awareness planning. So that's that the teenage years when the people are just getting their learners and going in and teaching about the safety and road safety and attitudes that you should have. So today with these sessions, we're going to share our experiences and our stories about the importance and benefits of collaborating with our stakeholders for the good of the community. So on the next slide, this very briefly, we're going to take you through the engagement approach for our service. So being so big and vast, there's no cookie cutter approach to community engagement throughout Queensland. However, in my experience, the basis of community engagement is the same no matter where you go. It's about understanding the community, its makeup, its culture, its engagement protocols, and it's really important to include the people who your decision will affect in the planning and decision-making process. As a learning that I've got out of the pilot projects that we did was from the Queenslanders with Disability Network, and they have a concept not about us without us. And that is truly a value that I've learned and carry on throughout my work. So very quickly, in a nutshell, our engagement strategy for QFD is about engaging our people first, seeking their information, their knowledge. Then we go out to our stakeholders and we engage with them, and together we engage the community. And that together bit is very, very important, because we seek gaps in the understanding and to provide the tools to the community so that they can make those informed decisions. So we're going to delve into my home region, Central Region, with this next slide. How do we take this state strategy and deploy it into regions? So you can see that dark blue section of the map, that's Central Region. So to give you an idea, it's approximately the size of New South Wales. And we have 2 regional community engagement coordinators who work as a team to help with build strategies and help our senior leaders to actually build their plans. So a little bit of background, since 2008, Central Region has had over 50 declared disaster events. There's cyclones, bushfires, monsoonal troughs, hailstorms, tropical lows, floods. That's just to name a few. They've also had compacting disasters. So we've had bushfires that were started by a cyclone, and then cyclones that have put out bushfires. In section there, we were at least a decade in the recovery process. So this has a lot of impacts on our people, our partners in the community, as you would imagine. So there's been battle weary of being hit by one thing after the other. You know, it can fracture relationships if they're not worked on. And that's something that we're very conscious of when we're doing our planning. And, you know, when they say, you know, spending that money in the preparedness stage has a direct effect on how much you spend in response. So how we have put that in our region, we've got a flow chart on the next slide. I'm just going to run you through how in our region we would manage this. So who is our community? We said our people, our partners, and our community. So we do some internal mapping to find out who our people are. We do stakeholder mapping with our partners that we need to engage with. And we do community profiling to understand our communities. So we ask the question, are they connected and capable? If they are, that's a great opportunity, looking at maintaining relationships, promoting those success stories of how these communities are capable and connected. And it's an opportunity too to support and build that volunteer capacity in those areas. So we also ask, what if they're not connected and not capable? Well, we need to understand why the what and why of that. So we do that by doing research. We identify community awareness of risk, and how do they prefer to communicate in peacetime as well? What are those communication channels that each of those communities utilise? And what's the gaps in service delivery? Are there barriers to engagement? We need to look at developing resources to reduce those gaps, and do we need engagement training? So what actions we take to engage with our people, our partners, and our communities. So with our people, it's about understanding the role that they have in community engagement. We share our messages, our campaign resources with our people, making sure that they've got a good understanding of what they need to be passing on to the community. We provide them with a calendar of events that they can tap into, things that are happening in their community that they might wish to attend. Obviously, engagement resources, we give them that. I'm going to talk about what we call the Reckon, a regional community engagement network, in the next slides that are coming up, and also the training. So with our people, our partners, sorry, we're looking at how do we collaborate on engagement, and also giving them our campaign resources so that they can be a redistributor of those messages. And basically, it's down to the community how to understand the risk and to receive those campaign messages. All of that, we evaluate it and then report back and start the circle all again. So that's just a bit of a flow chart we wanted to run past you on it. Okay, down to some practical tips. So this next slide, what we have established is regional community engagement networks. So they're an internal network. They come about from, we had a statewide engagement activity a number of years ago, and they started these networks to help the collaborative requirement of bringing everyone together to do these activity. So the people who are involved are your leadership level plus your engagement specialists. And what they do is they look for risk-based decision making. It focuses the region's community engagement efforts. It reduces that duplication of everyone trying to do the same thing. There's efficiencies of resources. It fosters those partnerships and relationships, provides advice to people, and it also gives a voice from the ground, which is really, really important. So in the next slide, this will show you some of the members of the Regional Community Engagement Network. So as some examples of the work and their successes, it's a strong network. It's a regionally focused engagement strategies that support our state campaigns. For an example, the engagement network supported Tech Rescue with understanding about the requirements, capabilities of the communities, what's there, what's not, fed that back into a state report. Some other things, local volunteer was being at the Rocky Nats, which is cars and lots of burnouts and things like that. They were working there as safety and said, what would be really good is to have something small that we can hold on our uniforms if anyone's interested in recruitment or some other information, that we've got a business card with a QR code that we can easily hand out. That was a local volunteer idea. It is now gone up the train, and it is a statewide resource for everyone. So there's little nuggets of gold that can come out of these groups. The pictures that you see there were the Regional Community Engagement Network received a 2025 Australia Day Achievement Award this year. So that was for exemplary dedication to implementing community engagement best practices using risk-based approaches to build the capacity and capabilities of our communities across PPRR. So how does this all link back to collaboration, what we're talking about today? We're working together for a common goal, and that helps to add value to the community and local solutions. Local people, as Brooke said in that video, are the experts on themselves. This group also realised that they were still lagging from getting that information from the ground So that's where they recognise the need for area working groups. So we'll go through that on the next slide. So these area working groups came around because they recognised a gap between the ground and the region, and there was no existing group that brought the stakeholders together so that we could collaboratively work on our common goals. So the people who are involved in this are our internal people, our partners. So in Queensland, we have local disaster management groups that's like-minded. It's emergency services, agencies that respond to events come together. They do planning and response. So those type of partners. And we also have community organisations, some that represent high-risk demographics. So it was trialled in Little Billawheeler in Central Region, and now it was expanded that we have 10 of them covering the whole of our central region. Next slide, please. So it identifies risk. It does stakeholder mapping. And as I said, we do collaborative solutions. So some of the examples of some of the work that has been done is in this slide. So the Capricornia group recognised that volunteering was an issue. We needed to have a look at it. It was over all the agencies. So they come up with the idea to do a CQ Volunteer Connect Expo. So that's coming up in April. And so there'll be live streaming sections from the state conference. There's exhibitors where people can find out what it's all about volunteering with those organisations. There's public speaking sessions, helping volunteers to work out how they can learn better with their public speaking. And there's also going to be a award ceremony. So that's something that's come out of the group getting together. We're also looking at mapping, community mapping exercises coming up in different areas as well. And they're all initiatives from the groups. How does this link back to collaboration? It's a common goal again. It's about shared responsibility. Not one agency can do everything. And the group strategy, how does that add value to the community? It's a community messaging is the same. It's building on skills of our partners that they may have skills we don't have. And it's local solutions for local risks, builds trust. So we'll pop on to the next slide. This is a reminder. This is your chance. Please put down, answer these 3 little questions, and we'd love to hear about them. So now, whilst we go through, we are going to hear from the Public Informations and Warnings Unit, and this is our PWU officer, Justin Fowler. He's going to be detailing the Australian Warning Systems, our grassroots community engagement pilot project. Over to you, Justin.
Thank you, Jules. Kia ora, ko Justin tuku ingoa. Hello, my name is Justin. I've got medium length scruffy brown hair today, a big pair of overhead headphones on, and I'm wearing a blue navy shirt. And I'm joining you all from Turrbal and your Grow Country in Meanjin, Brisbane. So I'm here today to give a little bit of an overview of the Australian Warning System Community-Led Warnings Redistributor Networks pilot programs that we ran in Queensland in 2024. So a little bit of an overview is that Queenslanders are increasingly used to seeing AWS warnings used for bushfire. And in 2023, we began to work on bringing the AWS online for storm, flood, and cyclone. Early delivery of these warnings products was a priority recommendation in the IGEM report following the 2022 Southeast Queensland floods. And during this process, our team collaborated extensively with community groups and leaders to create warnings products in easy, translatable English that were inclusive and accessible to everyone. We also understood that warnings awareness is a critical component to keeping our communities safe during emergencies. So while we ran a traditional warnings awareness campaign using advertising, we also took the step to focus on how we engage with communities to ensure that warnings awareness is accessible to everyone. So warnings awareness is a cornerstone of the Australian warning system. This project was inspired by the United Nations World Meteorological Organization's Warnings for All concept, which emphasises the importance of ensuring that everyone, especially vulnerable groups, has access to timely, accurate and actionable emergency information. This project was led by what was at the time the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services Public Information and Warnings Unit. Our initiative was a collaborative effort between QFES people, our QDMA or our Queensland Disaster Management Arrangements partners and community leaders. This follows the QFD, Queensland Fire Department, engagement strategy of our people, our partners and our communities. We wanted to focus on a community-led approach as much as possible, moving away from a top-down model where government agencies simply deliver instructions about how to access warnings or what to do during an emergency. Instead, we framed the project with 2 core questions to guide our efforts. These questions were, how would your community best learn about warnings? And how can we work together to ensure that warnings reach your community members during emergencies? Now, I think if we move to the next slide, I'll give you an overview of the projects that we did run. We initially intended to roll out 15 pilot initiatives across Queensland, each designed to empower communities to take ownership of how emergency warnings are distributed. These pilots focused on engaging with vulnerable groups that were identified under the World Meteorological Organization framework. These groups included young people, seniors, First Nations people, people with disabilities, and culturally and linguistically diverse people. And looking for communities to work with, our goal was simple. We just wanted to create sustainable community-led networks that can redistribute emergency warnings effectively. There were some prevailing headwinds with our project in that we had a short lead time, an active higher risk weather season, and inflexible project acquittal dates because of the Queensland emergency management sector reforms. So we had about 4 or 5 months to get these projects underway and the budgets acquitted for them. Because of this, we followed our engagement principles and sought to leverage our existing relationships that QFD people had within these communities. In establishing these projects, it involved reaching out to our network of regional community engagement coordinators and also identifying key leaders through partnerships that we created during the AWS warning products design phase. This was a risk mitigation strategy intended to abbreviate the relationship building phase. We did cold start some partnerships through our QDMA partners. However, one of our early learnings was the importance of being able to spend a good amount of time building the relationships with our communities. Our approach was intended to be inclusionary. It recognized that no 2 communities are alike and that solutions must be co-designed with those who understand their communities best. So some sort of questions that we pondered at the start of these projects were, how might First Nations communities prefer to receive warnings? What tools or resources could help culturally and linguistically diverse communities understand emergency messages in their own languages? Or how can we ensure that people with disabilities have access to information in formats that they can use? To give you an idea of some of the pilot outcomes, we had some language-specific explainer videos created by Queensland African Communities Council in 9 different African languages. Jules will give you a little bit more in-depth overview of the outcomes from the workshops that she led in Central Region with Queenslanders with a Disability Network and Central Queensland Multicultural Association. And we also did work in Mount Isa with traditional owners and also an organisation called Mithinkaya Nugli to help develop warnings awareness in that community and problem solve how to improve warnings awareness in remote communities. To support these programs overall, we included funding to cover a range of potential expenses from creative production costs like video editing, translation services, venue hire for workshops and events, training costs, printing fees for educational materials, and even tailored merchandise. This flexibility aims to help each community have access to the resources that it needed to make its pilot programs successful. The success of these pilots was measured by participation, as well as tangible outcomes, such as educating warnings redistributors within each community, participants receiving kits that were useful to them, and evidence of real engagement. For us, this project represented a shift in how we think about emergency preparedness. So from a top-down approach to one that is truly collaborative and community-driven. By working hand in hand with our QFD people, our partners and our community leaders who understand their community's needs better than anyone else, we worked to deliver warnings awareness in a way that was equitable. In closing, I just want to emphasize that this initiative was about more than just warnings. It was about empowerment. It was about giving people in everyday communities access to the information and the tools that they need to stay safe during emergencies. Back to you, Jules.
Thank you very much for that, Justin. Okay, let's delve into these case studies. The first one that we're going to be talking about is the work the collaborative work that we did with people living with disabilities. That's in conjunction with the Queensland Disabilities Network. So going through that strategy, our people, our partners, our communities, who were our people involved in this project? So it's regional community engagement coordinators, the public informations and warnings team, and that regional community engagement network come together to work out exactly what we needed and wanted from the collaborating with this particular group. So how do we ensure that emergency warnings and information reaches the people with disabilities in disaster and that they're understood? And how do we gain insights into any communication gaps in the Capricornia area so that we've got more effective and efficient communications to reach those communities? We'll pop on to the next slide. We're going to talk about our partners. So who did we need to collaborate with? The Queenslanders Julianne mission is something that I really like. It's about empowering people with disability to be fully included as citizens in the social and economic life of the community. So their motto is nothing about us without us. And that is something truly that I have taken away from this project and will always use. So we had already been working with QDN. Prior to this, they did a wonderful project in the area called Building Inclusive Disaster Resilient Communities. So there was a section in a focus group that we participated in, and one of the actions out of it was they wanted effective communication and a future focus group looking into the needs, the communication gaps and the needs of that community. So when this project came up, this is a great partner to work with. They then helped reach out and suggested that we work with the Home Support Association. So that group is located in Rockhampton. They're a local grassroots, non-government, for-purpose organisation supporting over 200 people living with disability. So they provide a variety of supports to people with disabilities. They can include personal care, transportation, community access, and these supports are designed to help people with disability live more independently and improve their quality of life. So in our co-design with these focus groups about the Australian warning systems, we had a diverse range of disabilities represented, including people with intellectual disability, acquired brain injury, or a psychosocial disability. Our other key partner was the Rockhampton Regional Council with their disaster management unit. So we all joined together to come and co-design a workshop and a program pilot project for this community. So talking about our community, why this community, why this location? There is over 6,000 people, about 7.5% of the population in that Rockhampton local government area that need assistance with a profound or severe disability. So this is 1.5% higher than the state average. So we already had relationships with the partner agencies, and this just seemed to be the right place to do it. So the group then that the Home Support Association enabled us to do workshops with was a group of people with intellectual disability. So how do we do that? We'll go on to the next slide. Co-design. Co-design, co-design, co-design. One of the biggest things that we learned, it's very, very important. You know, we were looking at how would the community best learn about warnings? How could we all work together to ensure warnings reach the community during emergencies? How do we understand the group's current comprehension of what the warnings are, what they mean to them? Where do they look for information in emergencies? And also to identify actions and bestow resources that would benefit their community. So, as I say, I'll repeat it again, the importance of co-design. They helped us to learn formats for communication resources, easy English, how to do that better. And it also was looking at that unconscious bias of what you may think people with a disability can or cannot do. So into the how did we actually do this? We'll go into the workshop format on the next slide. So obviously you define your goals. What do you want to achieve? Did a nice check-in and introductions. And then we went into a photo exercise. There was postcard photo size of different scenarios, people, and we asked people, I'll go into the further slides about that more detailed. We then provided Australian Warning System education piece. Then moving into my communications circle, which is a PCEP. A lot of people would probably have heard of the person-centered emergency planning preparedness program that's out there now. We utilise some of their resources. Action planning, what's their big ideas, and develop then an action plan. We'll go into more depth now into the next slide. So what did we learn? Communication needs to be accessible to people with varying abilities. The use of technology was really quite high, and there was a recurring message that they want an emergency app. It came up about 6 times through the workshop. The group really liked receiving text messages, and the most common communication channel is through their family and friends network, Facebook, and the Bureau of Meteorology. So the group workshop points of concern or consideration and came up with some big ideas for how communication can be enhanced. So we're going to give you the top 4 enhancements that the group come up with. 1, mobile phone app, something like Flyers Near Me, they want it. They also talked about mobile phone technology, enabling a phone to flash when a warning is received. Education was the 3rd top one. They wanted more education on what to do with pets in emergencies, evacuations, what to do if your home burns down, smoke alarms. In Queensland, we've got a legislative change coming up, so they want more information on that. And 4, to have an emergency kit. That was with the people, the service users. We also had another session with the staff in the afternoon. So they gave us some recommendations. I said, hold a mini emergency services day here so that the service users and the emergency service workers can get to know each other and they can ask questions. They want a smoke alarm workshop. Great. More disaster preparedness education. Tick. And they also noted that anxiety is the biggest challenge when trying to understand warnings and in disaster situations. So next, key findings. As I said, co-design, imperative for when we're doing engagement strategies. They know their community and they can connect us with their community and help design the best practice engagement strategies and tools. It meets the needs of the group, and it allows us access to end users who can test our products before the final resource is actually made. Accessible resources. We learn valuable lessons on about accessibility to develop educational resources in the most appropriate format for those people. Easy English resources using clear language, large print, pictures are preferred. An example of how we're actually putting these learnings into practice is that we are currently testing an easy English community newsletter that can be used for bushfire operations. So that's in the testing phase at the moment. Relationships are really important. That project helped to build new sustainable relationships with service providers, and that work that we're doing is becoming business as usual. Values. Reinforce the importance of that value, not about us, without us. It emphasises transparency and inclusion. Everyone has the right to say something about the decisions that affect them. As we said, education, further education is needed. Technology, love using mobile phones, and communication channels. There's some further considerations that we can look at there. Some people were listening to radio stations that don't broadcast emergency warnings. So how do we break through those listening channels where the warnings are not going out? So next, the recommendations. Reduce anxiety. How do we do that? Building relationships, providing information, education on the topics that the group deems important that they need to learn about. Education, we fulfilled that. So preparedness educational sessions, the wonderful Rocky Regional Council Disaster Management Unit came in and did some sessions about preparedness, evacuation planning, including all those key topics like pets and emergencies that the group wanted to learn more about. We're also putting into place pre-season workshops. So prior to bushfire season, we come in, we'll talk about what the season needs is coming up is looking like and what messaging is current. We did an mini emergency services day, something that we learned from that. We will change the time of year. Unfortunately, fire could not attend because we were dealing with bushfires, but that benefit of the collaboration is that the other groups that were there were able to, they knew enough about our business to know where to refer people to get the information. So because we couldn't physically be there, their messages were still being able to be transferred to the people who are asking. Communication methods, as we said, in the community engagement, you may get big ideas coming out from groups. Sometimes we're not able to do the big ideas. So our group, we're not able to work on technology for a mobile phone. So it flashes when an emergency warning comes through. If there's some smart people out there, this is something that the group wants, so you might be able to find a way of doing it. As said, radios, about those non-emergency broadcasting, how do you put advertising on them, pointing people to where they can find information? They suggested variable messaging boards, putting messages up there, and redistribution channels. Home Support Association are now going to forward our warnings. They have signed up to receive warnings. They're going to forward information and warnings onto their staff and to their service users. And referral process. There's an opportunity for that support agency staff who are working out in the community. They might be able to see if they're in a person's home, you know, there might be a benefit in for the fire service to come in with what we call a safe home program. That's where the firefighters will come out free of charge and help the person to identify potential fire threats in their home. So there's a potential referral from there. And also emergency dashboard alerts. You know, they wanted the alerts localised. Rockhampton Regional Council now have a disaster dashboard alerts, and Carmen, who is part of that, is part of the panel discussion. I'm sure she'll talk about that later. Resources-wise, we developed emergency kit for this community. So branded backpacks, waterproof wallets to hold important documents, Australian warning system branded, battery operated radios. We also knew there that we had to create easy to use instructions for how to use the radios, fridge magnets with the Australian warnings on it. And we developed what you see in the slide now. There's easy English emergency kit checklist. They wanted a checklist. So that now has been developed. So we're drawing to close to the end of this project. So providing feedback. We'll go on to the next slide, please. So providing feedback, closing the loop is incredibly important when we do our community engagement. So we want to, the people gave up their time to come to provide and help us. So we need to come back to them and let them know what we've used for that information. So we held an effective warnings workshop again afterwards, and that's where we provided feedback to the group about how their opinions, ideas, and time were utilised. And we also took the time to test, upon hearing a particular warning, what would the group do? So we tested our watch and act and emergency level warnings from that. The timing of the workshop, coincidence, it was held on Halloween. There's a lot of lovely dressed up people, but it also followed the night before the workshop. There was a structure house fire in Rockhampton, and the morning as the workshop was starting, there was another structural fire. So some of the participants that are coming over saw the smoke from the fire. So it was very top of mind when this workshop was happening. We'll just pop over to the next slide. Here's an example of some of the messages and tools that we used on that day. So we partnered with Predictive Services on that day. They gave a bit of an outline of what they think the season's going to look like. And as I said, we tested that. What would you do if you got asked to seek shelter immediately? And what would you do if you're told to leave immediately? So we had a highly engaged group, some great conversations. We talked about the confusion between sheltering in place for a cyclone versus a bushfire. And we did the presentation of the kits, and the Home Support Association finished off the day with a fire drill. One of the things that is amazing to see afterwards is the peer-based education. So those people that participated in the workshops were out there telling everyone else that was there, you need to get prepared, you need to do this. And they were so excited. And that's still happening today. When I was talking to them last week, they're still educating their own. So that's just wonderful. So next slide, where do we go from here? This year, Home Fire Safety and Smoke Alarms Workshop is happening. Mini Expo service in a different time of year is happening. I'm having trouble with that word today. Campaign materials are going to be distributed by this agency, and something else we're going to look at is investigating other partners like the Home Support Association that we can work with to provide the same service. Okay, that is the information on case study 1. Okay, up to case study 2. This is with the Central Queensland Multicultural Association. They have a group, a Disaster Community Connectors group. So this is a group of about 43 members, and they're volunteers who give up their time to pass on emergency information and preparedness information to their own communities. It's a fantastic program. So we've already had relationships with these groups in previous years, so it was a good fit. So our people, our partners, our communities. Who are the people? Our people, same group. So we're asking the same questions as in the first one before. Over to the next slide. We'll show you who our partners. Slightly different. So as I said, the Central Queensland Multicultural Association, key to accessing the community. The Rockhampton Regional Council, once again, were involved with this, with the Disaster Management Unit. And we also had, the State Emergency Service involved as well. So why this community? Why this area? So Capricorn area takes in the Rockhampton, Livingston Regional Council areas. So it's a home to just about 125,000 people. So it's a diverse and vibrant community, and there's cultures such as Indigenous Australian, Europeans, Brazilian, Pacific Islander communities. So the top 5 languages, non-English speaking backgrounds, so from the Philippines, India, China, Vietnam, and Germany. So at the last census, there was just under 7,000 people who spoke another language as well as English in that area. So 934 of this community do not speak English well or at all. So as I said, with the multicultural community has this connector community already in existence. So helping their communities gain the understanding of risks, and they learn how to prepare, respond, and recover from a disaster. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. So next slide, please. So the intention of this group was similar. We wanted to gauge the understanding and comprehension of the Australian warning system with that community and be able to provide what they needed to pass that information on to the community. So very quickly, the outline, the usual stuff, welcome, icebreaker. We repeated that postcard exercise. We defined what we wanted to achieve from today. Little change up. We asked the participants to provide a positive story about their experience in information sharing. We then went to the educational presentation, and we utilised a technique called World Cafe for a group brainstorming area. So around the room, we had different topics, and it was almost like speed dating for information. So we had one section with, what's your communication channels you use? Where do you get your sources for information? What format do you want it in? What language do you want it in? And is there any cultural considerations that we need to be looking at? After that was done, we prioritised the information that come out of it to look at our top 5 ideas, then looking at how do we develop this into action plans. And then it was finalised with an SES recruitment presentation, which the group were really wanting to hear about. Okay, what were the insights? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we had 19 people from Papua New Guinea, Brazil, Bangladesh, Solomon Islands, and Germany attend this workshop. So as we said, we did that photo exercise again. So I just want to give you a little bit of what came out of that, the sentiment from that exercise. So it was about people feeling scared, feeling suffocated, alone. There was disbelief that, that these events were happening. They could be noisy. There's confusion. They need to be prepared for these events. There's also feelings of being optimistic that, they'd be able to get through this. There's a lot of togetherness when events come. They want to feel togetherness with their community, which they have, and their cultural communities. And there's a real, we'll do whatever it takes attitude, which was really interesting to see. Not interesting to see, it was just really good to see all these different feelings come out. So through the workshop, we asked these 2 questions. How would your community best learn about warnings? And what's the best way to work together? What we found out, so communication channels, most common are through Facebook, family, friends, and websites. They also, their own cultural communication channels are used a lot. So there were some things where they have WhatsApp groups for their communities. They don't listen to radio. This group particular didn't look to radio very much, and they never received information from door knocks. So we'll pop on to the next one for some more findings. So what do we find? Translation gaps. Campaign catchphrases may not translate well into other languages, and messages are lost. So an example of that is some work in South West with our regional community engagement coordinator there. The word lint does not transfer very well into other languages. So they started using fabric fibers instead of lint, so the message doesn't get missed. So we're looking at that further research. What do we need to do to really understand our messages and whether they're getting lost in translation? Easy English is preferred, and pictorials, once again, will translate through. We're looking that they wanted further education. So a workshop into really understanding the warnings and what the behavioural actions that they need to take. We'll be looking at doing pre-season workshops, a bit like with the case study 1, bushfire and then severe weather, what the season looks like, what do you need to do? And from a response capacity, there's an intel capability there. So this group can provide information about how their communities are going back through to your local disaster management group and things like that. Another thing that came out was they did not understand the difference between a capacity, the category of severity of events. So an example, what's the difference between a category 1 and a category 5 cyclone? With more education on that, they really wanted to have that. Lived experience. As an organisation, we can learn from the lived experience of that group. How do they manage cyclones in their own home countries and things like that? We can learn. Warnings channels, the channels where the warnings go out. We need to promote listening to the radio and what channels they are. And as I said, that intelligence gathering from the community during operations. Next, key recommendations. From the group, they did say that the idea of providing information prior to entering the country would be very beneficial. Unfortunately, whilst this idea is productive, it's not something that we could do at our level. So we pass the idea up the channel. Pre-season workshops, yes, we will be doing those. Using lived experiences and real incidents as the catalyst for learning. Communication channels, email and SMS. You can sign up for warnings. They're looking at that. Social media is an important communication tool. And they were looking at localised messaging for the area. So Rockhampton Regional Council now, as we said, has emergency alerts that they can sign up to get the information for their local area. We have distribution channels, the CQMA network, wonderful opportunity to get information through. They also suggested employers and other partners that actually employ people from different cultural backgrounds, focusing on them, like the Meatworks, to be able to say, can you please redistribute our messaging and to your workforce? Schools was another idea. Go through the schools to pass out your messaging. They helping neighbours, that came out again, and they're also very concerned about the elderly who live by themselves, of how do we get information out to them. 3 more recommendations were resources, translated information. Yes, they do want that. And with the AWS Australian Warnings icons, could it possibly have the wording underneath it, like the fire icon to have fire? Relationships, connections with community leaders, building those relationships between emergency services and community leaders. They really like that idea, and it's about normalising the communication between it. And once again, that intelligence feedback providing through to the decision makers. Okay, the next one. This is some practical resources that we came up with. So this is the emergency kit. Similar to disabilities, is a heavy-duty branded backpack, waterproof wallet, Australian warning system radio, and the channels and information, watch for warnings, an easy English checklist. And translated resources have also been developed throughout the state. Okay, last little section on what's the next steps are. So there is multiple different stakeholders that want to engage with this community. Rockhampton Regional Council have taken the lead in bringing those community members, those partners together to come up with a coordinated approach to providing training and engagement activities with the group for 2025. So it's about streamlining presentational requirements, it reduces any duplication of messaging, provides information in a timely manner, and it respects the volunteers' time. So QFD, what we're going to do, we're going to hold a 000 and fire safety workshop in May this year. So that's going to be held at the fire station. And we also have our fire communications centre in the same location. So half the group will go into the fire comm, half the group will be down. They will do a mock 000 phone call to understand what questions that the fire comm will ask. People upstairs in FireCom will see what happens when a 000 phone call comes in. People downstairs will see what happens as they're responding, and then when they come back, they'll actually understand what questions are going to be asked of you at the emergency situation for a structural fire. So we're a bit excited about that one. We'll also touch on home fire safety and bushfire preparedness when that time comes around, probably about July 2025. Okay, just finalising in conclusion. Next slide, please. So basically, by collaborating with like-minded people and partners, we learn more about the needs of the community. We have a coordinated approach. It reduces confusion about mixed messages. It offers important information that is requested by the community and identifies gaps in awareness to allow for our communities to make informed decisions about themselves for their own safety. Okay, well, thank you for listening to us about those case studies. And now we're at the situation, final submissions are due now. When we're going to go into a panel discussion during that time, we'll be looking at what challenges and questions that you've put forward. And after the panel discussion, we'll be looking at that. So now I'm going to hand over to Hayley Hayes to go through our panel discussion. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jules. Hi, everybody. My name is Hayley Hayes. I'm from the Queensland Fire Department. I have shoulder-length dark brown hair. I'm wearing beige reading glasses and a light blue top. I'm joining you from Yugambeh language region on the Gold Coast. So we're going to kick off this panel discussion and continue the conversation we've been having about collaborative community engagement and unpack some of those success factors, challenges, and lessons learned. We have an incredible panel here today online with us who have all been involved in some really great collaborative projects in the disaster management space, working together to co-design creative solutions to meet local community needs. So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to our panel members today. And panel members, give us a wave. We've got with us Justin Fowler, who you've met already, Public Information Officer at the Queensland Fire Department, Raylene Baulch, Regional Community Engagement and Recruitment Officer, State Emergency Service, Carmen Jensen, Community Engagement Officer, Rockhampton Regional Council, Michelle Moss, Chief Executive Officer, Queenslanders with Disability Network, and Des Ryan, Deputy Chair, also Queenslanders with Disability Network. Due to some unexpected circumstances, unfortunately, Superintendent Brad Stockwell is unable to be here today, but he sends his apologies. So as we kick off, there is a lot of great discussion happening in the chat. Thank you, audience, for your participation so far, and please pop any questions that you have for the panel into the Q&A section, not the chat, into the Q&A. And we'll come to those in a little while. And if you see a question there that you really love and you would love that to be asked, you can upvote it, and that will help us to facilitate this session and prioritize what you want to hear. So let's start by exploring some more around why collaboration is so essential. And Michelle, I'm going to start with you. You've been involved in facilitating a lot of collaborative processes, bringing together emergency services, local councils, community groups, people with a lived experience of disability, all to deliver disaster preparedness initiatives in a very locally led and community focused way. So can you tell us, why is it so important to bring all of these people together, and why is collaboration critical to achieving stronger outcomes?
Well, I think, Hayley, like one of the things we often talk about and we think about that collaboration and the actual work of co-design is making sure that everybody is around the table. And really it is like the ingredients to making a cake. And when you don't have all the right ingredients in there, we don't get the right outcomes for that wonderful, delicious cake that we want to eat. And I think, collaboration and co-design really is about the act of bringing all the right people around the table and leveraging off the knowledge, wisdom and understanding of each of the different groups. And that also brings such a richness to enhance each other's understanding, because, people with disability don't know all there is to know about disaster and emergency management. And likewise, the emergency services sector don't know about people with disability. And in working together, it really has that richness of sharing information, building each other's capacity and literacy in those other systems so that we can better work together and better navigate the challenges and also come up with the right solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said about having the right ingredients. It's just not going to be quite the right outcome at the end if the right people aren't involved from the very beginning. Thank you, Michelle. Raylene, I'm interested in drawing on your operational experience in the State Emergency Service. In what ways have you seen collaboration with partner agencies enhance operational responses? Do we have you, Ray? I think you might be frozen, Ray, so we'll come back to you in a moment. Let's move to you, Des. You've been involved in some really impactful community projects. Can you tell us a bit about those initiatives, what that experience was like, and what it means to you to be involved in collaborative disaster preparedness projects?
Well, one of the first initiatives I was involved with was this community training network way back in the early days, was Expo in Rockhampton, Aging and Disability Expo. And I was the go-to guy for that project. And what happened was we had a range of stakeholders we were involved, but we reached out to everyone. And one of the guys that touched base with the regional person from ABC, and to see if we could get a direct link and people talk a bit during the day on the line to someone from the site, so people could ring in and ask questions about it. Anyway, he reached out and he got Macca on Sunday in, and which is a great plus for Aging and Disability Expo. And he come in and spoke at our site and asked questions and played music at his show, Macca on Sunday. And that was a big thing. And we had a cook come up from Toowoomba and cooked on the site. And one thing that brings everyone together, is food. And it was bloody amazing. And we all had, and Queensland housing, I think, had built a breakdown accessible kitchen and set it up on the site. It was a bit of a first. And that was just some amazing first. And it was really impactful for me to learn that the more you reached out, the more you sometimes involve more people in positive effects. And later on, one of the other projects I was involved with was when Rockhampton was going through the process of amalgamation with Mount Morgan, Yeppoon, and also Fitzroy. So I could see the writing on the wall. If we didn't act quickly, we'd get the same old, same old. So what I did, I reached out to some of the participants who were going to be elected and got a bit of involvement there and spoke to them about what we'd like to see people with disability role in the future. And made a bit of an impact there. And Brad Carter, when he came in, he was a completely different kettle of fish. He had a business-like approach to involving people with disability, reaching out, he's proactive, and he come to things probably never knew what he was getting into, but he was open to it. And he was a great mayor, that I think, and he set the tone. And unfortunately, he didn't see the opposition that people had. And when they had the next election about the whole process, he lost out. And anyway, that's the way it is. But one of the other things when I was managing those workshop for ageing and disability was we had people with an idea for an event to look at the nursing home situation. Big topics were people couldn't get their aged parents into nursing homes. So with that workshop, it created a lot of stir. We had input from everyone, and after that, we had places made more available in the central region for people with disabilities or otherwise to get into nursing homes. And there were a lot of firsts. And then one of the things that was probably more amazing to me, one of the members wanted to have a fashion show for men and women. And I thought, this is a big sell, but I thought I won't say anything. And we give it a go. And boy, it was a sellout. People from all backgrounds come to look at it. So when someone comes up with all the experience, a bit unusual idea, and if they're willing to work on it and develop it a bit with you, well, get them involved. What's the damage going to go? You might really get a lot more people involved. They don't have to look like you, talk like you, or share the same philosophy, but they've all got ideas, and if they're willing to get involved and help, what harm could occur? And there's a lot of things like that over the years. And, running pub crawls, you get involved with a lot of groups, and fun too. And so there's so many more, but, probably it makes me feel good to get involved in some of those projects, otherwise I wouldn't do it. But it's just really, really positive to get people involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Des. Some really great examples there. And, it's that richness that working together brings to our projects that Michelle was talking about. And sometimes it can really lead to some pretty amazing creative solutions that you might not have thought of by yourself, but really resonate with the community and have an amazing impact. Raylene, we might put back to you, see if we can hear you now. Have we got you there? Can you hear? Try that again, testing Raylene. No, sorry, Raylene, we don't have you. It is breaking up quite a bit. So we'll try to come back to you again very soon. So moving along, we know that there's huge benefit in working collaborative, and it's very high value to us working in the community engagement space. And I think we all know that, and that's why everybody's here online today. But it doesn't mean that it's always easy or without challenges. And I'm interested in unpacking that a little bit. What challenges have you faced when collaborating? And Justin, I know that you touched on a couple of things in your presentation. I'm wondering if you might be able to expand on that a little bit with the Australian Warning System projects. What are some of those challenges you came up against when collaborating with diverse communities, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, thanks, Hayley. So I think one of the biggest challenges that we had with the Australian Warning System grassroots pilot programs was time. So when I talk about time, I'm talking about the time to build relationships, the time to work genuinely and authentically with the communities, to come up with those ideas and truly collaborate, but also time for other things as well. So I don't know how many people online have gone through government procurement processes or things like that. So making sure you have the time to navigate process as well. So with the pilot programs, I have mentioned already that we had some bigger time-related challenges. So we knew that in June of 2024, the Australian Warning System campaign budget would leave our department, and also the responsibility for severe weather, flood and cyclone warnings would transition away from us as well. And so I guess to overcome these challenges, we knew that would come. We set really clear financial deadlines. We looked for existing relationships that our people had that could be continued and supported over time if they needed to be. And I guess we also made sure that we really communicated how much time we had to do it. So set a clear scope. One of the other challenges we encountered was, I guess, meeting communities where we're at. So one project comes to mind where we started off the engagement with a lot of enthusiasm for the Australian Warning System, but as we progressed, we kind of realised that that community was more interested in home fire safety, and that was a much more present risk to that community, and they were more interested in learning what they could do in that space, which was out of scope of that project. But what we were able to do there was recognise that, acknowledge it, and link them up with different stakeholders in the department who are able to take them on that journey. So I guess, facilitate the building of new relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So, it sounds like, there needs to be some really solid structure in place around, communicating those timeframes and things like that, but also, following the community's lead in a sense and meeting the community where they're at. And like you said, sometimes that can, move you into a space that might be out of scope. So, building on that, I'm interested to know how, what are some other strategies? How do we ensure our collaborative efforts remain productive and on track and focused on those shared goals? I might go to Carmen, and Justin, you might have some more to share on that too.
Yeah, thanks, Hayley. So I guess just on what Justin was speaking about, a challenge that we do face, and some of you online may be able to resonate with this, is actually having the resources in a regional area, which is why it's really important to have these partnerships and collaborate with each other to leverage off each other's strengths, but also weaknesses. So in terms of remaining productive and focused, Jules mentioned it in her presentation earlier. We continue to have our Capricornia area working group. We meet 4 times a year to share new ideas, innovation, and the community events that are happening across Capricornia area, so Rockhampton and Livingston. With working with Central Queensland Multicultural Association, we actually identified through those groups and those pilot workshops that we needed to actually focus and be more productive with that audience. So just before the Christmas break, we met with our partners and stakeholders and actually came up with a calendar for 2025 so that we weren't duplicating efforts and workshops across the region.
Fantastic. Some great strategies there. Did anyone else have anything from the panel they wanted to share around that?
Hayley, I was just going to add in there too. I think it's really important in that work of collaboration, and we know that we have to get to an outcome and often deliver on something. But I think part of the journey of co-design and the journey of collaboration is sometimes that meandering path, and I think it never ceases to amaze me, and all the work of collaboration engagement, to be surprised about where you might end up, because I think often, and I'm sure everybody here has been in those situations where you go in and you think you got something and you're presenting or testing, and then there is that richness of that being informed by others and thinking through in a different way, and those different perspectives that people bring from their own lived experiences of either disability or disaster. And I think that's that piece about being open and curious in the process is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very much a journey.
I had a friend of mine who's blind, and he shared at one of our workshops about this, and he shared that they had a big fire over North Rock where he lived, and because he lived alone, but he had different service, but not very often. And what happened was he noticed a lot of smoke around, but he thought, oh, it's just smoke, you know. He didn't bother, didn't listen to the radio. And so what he did, he was listening to his tapes and stuff. And later on, the next day, before the next day, he thought, I'll go for a bit of walk and see, you know, what's going on. He went out for a walk and he couldn't see anyone, completely isolated. They walked back to his house, well, not see anyone, but, you know, hear any noises. They went back to his house. Next day, he found out they'd evacuated the whole area and no one had door knocked his house, you know. And,
wow.
And it was so funny at the time when he told that story, but it made you realize you've really got to reach out to everyone.
Yeah, and so great that outcome worked out well for your friend. But I think you've really highlighted one of the really key risks of not including people in these planning processes. And I imagine there's probably some people online that you know, have particular projects in mind, and they're thinking about taking a collaborative approach, but also thinking it can be a bit challenging, and I've got deadlines and I've got a really defined outcome that I'm trying to achieve, and maybe it's just quicker and easier for me to do it by myself. So I'm interested to hear more from you, Des, and from Michelle. What are some of the other risks of not including diverse voices in community engagement and decision making?
Well, especially in the CALD community, you know, different people have cultural ways of communicating. The wives might get all the information, but only through the husband. And it's not every case, but it does happen. Like, it was brought up to me one day. I was talking to a taxi driver that I knew really well. And he was very friendly with another taxi driver, like really friendly. And I said to him, oh, what's his wife like now? He'd just recently married a year. And he said, oh, I've never really met her. So hello. I said, you never have barbecue together? No. Well, no, it would lead to no good. You just don't do that. And I thought, that's so sad in a lot of ways, but that is the experience for a lot of people for a long time. So they really become more switched on to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. There's people in our community that don't have the same access to information as others. So, you know, tailoring our approach to meet diverse needs. What about you, Michelle?
Hayley, I think I would just add in there that I think, you know, at the far end of the risks is that we get wrong, and that we don't deliver for people, and we leave people behind. And I think, you know, the extreme risks that, you know, Des highlighted in that example that we are all aware of, and that we all want to focus on and work together, of why preparedness, why having a plan, and why tailored response strategies are critical. You know, we often talk about in other examples of infrastructure and things like the next generation rolling stock trains in Queensland, where, you know, we didn't involve people with disability in the design of those, and unfortunately we didn't build the trains in a way that meant that people could get on them and get to where they needed to go on the carriage. So I think at that extreme risks, they sit there. But at the end of the day, we miss out on the opportunities of people to inform and give good information. We also miss out on, I think, Jules was talking about the opportunity for people to become empowered and to become ambassadors for others. And that is one of the really incredible ripple effects of thinking about when that rock, lands in the water. And Carmen, I can see in your background that sort of pattern of the ripple effect. And, that is what collaboration, engagement and co-design helps create. And it's not just, led by people with disability, but it is through those partnerships and collaboration. And yeah, in having the right partners and the right people involved lead to ways of working that gives innovation and means that we can make a difference in people's lives.
And we all learn. I was at one of the early workshops in Rockhampton, I think with Julianne Webster there. I heard Sandy Patton talking about her generator. She lived out in the bush blocks down Livingston Way. And I thought, that's a vast expense. Went on the side, but eventually I looked into it, thought, what's the good of having money in my super if we have power outages and they can be extensive, and I'm laying in bed just going flat, and my communication's going to be limited. So I lashed down and got it and set this 7 kilowatt system up, and it's a beauty. It kicks in at 5 minutes, the power's out. You don't even notice the power's out till you look down the street, black. Look up the street, black. I think I'm the only one. And it's just so comfortable when you got aircon on a day like that. You really smile at all the moments.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Absolutely. A lot of great lessons coming through from this discussion and some great chat online as well. So keen to kind of learn more about some of the things that you've learnt throughout this journey. And Raylene, I think we've got you back online now. Can you share with us what are some of the most valuable lessons you've learned along the way around collaborating effectively?
Can you hear me now, Hayley?
Got you loud and clear.
Third time is a charm. Oh, thank you very much, and my sincere apologies. I guess for me, I've learned that the collaboration, it's continued work, and it takes time, and it is a commitment. A huge part of collaboration really is listening to people. And like people have mentioned, make sure people get a seat at the table and that people are actually heard. Those people sitting at that table actually bring with them their own expertise, their own knowledge, their own past challenges and experiences. All of that helps have, creative collaboration, and that's what we can leverage upon to help support our communities. And that's the case with any collaboration. It's really important that we remember that we need to, as it's already been mentioned, every community is different. And we need to acknowledge that and remember that. We need to map out that community, map out the people, the risks. And we've all got one shared vision. And basically that's to support our communities. That's our end goal. That's what we want to achieve most of all. So I think collaboration's really, really important. And it can be really fun. We want to support our communities and help them in their times of need, and remember that it's really important to close the loop. So after a particular collaboration or event like what we're going through, we've got to remember, what did we learn from that? We've got to come back together and figure out, what did we do well? What can we do better? If this happens again, what improvements can we come together with on that, because we're always learning from it and always developing it and always changing it. And if we you can't change it if we don't try and figure out where we can do better next time. So I think just remember that we just need to make sure we close those loops and learn from every occasion, and just keep in the back of our minds that this is just about supporting community. It's nothing too elaborate. That's what we need to remember. Support those communities because they're the ones exposed.
And Hayley, I was just going to jump in there on the back of what Raylene was saying, because I've been having conversations with some of our members who are in Townsville, and you know, one of the things that they've been reflecting on is we need to review our PCEP, our own individual plans, so that we can take this experience and learn from that, so that we've got a sharpened plan for next time a disaster emergency happens, which may or may not be the same, but I guess it's about that reflection and learning that is so important. And I'm really sorry, but I do have to go, and but my colleague Amy is here, and Hayley, she will jump in with any kind of final remarks. But many thanks to everybody for a great discussion, and for AFAC for hosting this, and our colleagues at Queensland Fire Department. I think it's a great example of great partnership. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us, and welcome Amy to the panel. So some really great discussion there around the success factors of community engagement, and I love what you were saying, Raylene, about it does take commitment, and it's a long-term journey. It's not often just a once-off project. And also about how those relationships can really lead to some innovative solutions. So interested to hear from the panel. Does anyone have any other examples of how those collaborations and those relationships have sparked innovation or creative solutions in your work?
I'm happy to chat on that one, Hayley. I guess Jules didn't mention in her presentation, and I just wanted to touch for those that don't actually are based in Queensland. So why is local government in the room? Why are they collaborating with your emergency management stakeholders? Well, in Queensland, under the Queensland disaster management arrangements, usually local government chair the local disaster management group. So I just thought I would add to that to get a little bit of an indication of why I'm here today, and why, I was collaborating with the projects and the AWS Australian Warning System pilot workshop.
Great.
So one of the things through those workshops, and Jules mentioned as well, we identified language barriers and getting that information out to our community. So to address this through our Rockhampton emergency dashboard, we've actually enabled a change language button. So what that does is someone from the community can actually jump onto our dashboard and use that change language button to actually get that messaging in their own language, meaning that the warnings are getting out quicker and faster to community. So that's a little bit about an innovative solution. Another example that Jules touched on was the shortfall in regional communities of volunteer emergency management stakeholders and wider community volunteers. So through our Capricornia Community Engagement Working Group, we actually came together, and the idea was created and developed to actually work together, and now we're forward planning and well into get the wheels in motion for our Volunteer Connect Expo on 21st of March. So that doesn't just benefit the emergency management space. So you've got state emergency services and Royal Fire Service volunteers, as well as Australian Red Cross, but it's going to benefit the wider community with all of those volunteer involving organisations. So I guess to end on that, that's the result of collaboration between our partner agencies.
Amazing. Great. Examples of where those long-term relationships have led to some pretty creative outcomes. And I think, it probably does seem hard at the beginning, but once you've had that experience of wow, like we've really achieved something great together, it almost just becomes second nature and business as usual to bring everyone together for the next project and the next project, and then next minute you're delivering amazing volunteering expos. So well done to your teams on that great work. There's some interest in the Q&A, and something that I wanted to touch on as well was around measuring success. Something that's not easy to do, but how do we know that we've succeeded at doing that? How do we know that we've had an impact and we've successfully included diverse voices in our decision making and our community engagement strategies?
Yeah, I can talk to that one, Hayley. So I guess numbers are great, data is great, and quantitative numbers tell all sorts of different stories, but they're not always aligned to the measurements or the success that you're looking for in a project, right? So with the Australian Warning System pilot programs, our intent from the outset was to benchmark against whether we had given vulnerable communities the opportunity to learn about the Australian Warning System and be able to teach others within the community about the Australian Warning System, and then have we worked together to create tools or experiences to support the awareness within that community and help to build resilience. So building a narrative around that in numbers is not always the easiest. So I guess when we were measuring, we were looking for things like feedback and sentiment. What sort of influence have the communities had on the outcomes generated? So have the communities driven the decision making, and has their input been genuinely reflected in the outputs? What sort of trust levels and enduring relationships are in place? So these pilot programs in Central Queensland, for instance, are great examples of how there is an enduring relationship which has been able to, do so many other great things and will continue to do great things to help build resilience in these communities. And then I guess there's an advocacy piece there as well. So you might not be able to change everything or make effective solutions straight away, but by having conversations with these communities, then people in your teams and your organizations become aware of challenges and concerns that these communities might have, and you're able to advocate that for that within your own organization as well, and hopefully incrementally over time see improvements. Yeah.
Amazing. Carmen, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I guess the pretty obvious measure to the success is at the end of the day when an event happens, what's the response and the reaction from community? Are we having an influx of calls coming through out of the local disaster coordination centre and emergency services? Or are we having a community that's well prepared, that understand the warnings, that have an emergency kit, and they're self-sufficient and able to actually respond to those disasters without relying? I just heard someone talk about donuts. Who was that?
Always helps.
People with disabilities haven't been that great at showing initiative to get involved. But once they do come along, and if you can do the hard work to get them back to the next workshop, all that exposure to what people are doing makes them want to just work a little bit more on that plan. That's all I say to people. Just work a little bit on your plan. And step by step, they do make a lot of steps towards achieving a final plan that has got everything incorporated. And, you can learn. You've got some people that make some unusual choices, but they know it'll work for them.
Yep, and I think that's the key point. What works for them, what works for the community. We've got a lot of organisations represented online today that have large volunteer workforces. And we know volunteers are very much embedded in our local communities. Raylene, how does including local knowledge and local community voices lead to better outcomes?
Yeah, thanks, Hayley. Look, I think it's pretty simple. It's locals supporting locals and, community helping community. which leads into that. That's what volunteering is about, you know. I think it certainly shines through in some of our smaller community. There's already trust there that's been established. You know, in times of need, there's who's the constant there? It's those communities members. They live there. It's, you know, in a disaster, before the disaster, during the disaster, after the disaster, they're the ones still there. You know, emergency services and other stakeholders, we certainly send in support. We pre-deploy, we tarp roofs, we rescue, we assist with the recovery, all those sorts of things. We do all of that. But at the end of the day, it's these people in the community whose lives have been severely impacted. They're the ones that are still there at the end of it, you know, and having embedded volunteers in these communities helps those communities feel better supported. Our volunteers help shape and educate the communities. They know the weak points in their own communities. I really like to refer to a small community. We've got one shop in that community, but we know that that shop's going to continue to operate in a disaster because they've got the generator. So that's going to be our main port, our main area where we can congregate and support the broader community. So, you know, we know our locals that volunteer, they know, well, when the water gets to this particular level, look, we need to start having some of those conversations about what next, where do we go from here, you know, and those sorts of things. So as an agency, you know, we need to continue to support and encourage those volunteers in these communities and help them have ownership over processes, what happens in their communities. And I think at the end of the day, that's what helps start to create more resilient communities.
Yeah, I think you said a really key word there, which is trust. And often, you know, the message can be great, but if it's not delivered by a trusted source, then sometimes it's not heard. Sorry, Jules, did you want to jump in there?
Yes, I was just wondering whether we could...
You're keeping me on time.
Yeah, I just reach out to my counterpart in Central Region, Brooke Burke. Brooke has been slaving behind the scenes to... hi, Brooke, how are you? So you just need to unmute yourself.
Hello.
So hand over to Brooke, and panel, I want you to stay there because we're going to have a look at what has come out from the cohort that we've been working with today about challenges and learnings that they've experienced with community engagement. Over to you, Brooke.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brooke Burke and I'm a Regional Community Engagement Coordinator. I'm the other half of Jules's brain, as we like to say here in Central Region. I have long brown hair, tan coloured glasses, and I'm wearing a green jacket, coming to you from Maryborough, Queensland on Butchulla country today. I have had the absolute pleasure of getting to sort through all the QR code data insights and responses around collaborative community engagement challenges, successes and obstacles to collaboration, and I'd love to share some of those key themes with you. As Jules said, any of our panel members jump in at any time. You know I'll talk all day, so cut me off, please.
We have 7 minutes.
Excellent. Right, 7 minutes. I'm keeping to time. I've got it. Right, cool. So question 1 today was, in 3 words, would you describe your greatest community engagement challenge? So on my screen there, you can see the word cloud that's been produced through your responses, and some of those key themes that we've seen include communication barriers, so misinformation, communication and language, trust and credibility, so that mistrust, the preconceived ideas and negative perceptions hindering our engagement efforts. There was engagement struggle, so overcoming apathy, fatigue, disengaged community is key to participation. There was talk of geographic and demographic hurdles, so large diverse communities and isolated communities that need tailored approaches. Lots of comments around resources and capability limits, so funding, time, staffing, internal support are often stretched and thin, or that the value of community engagement isn't always appreciated. There was some mention of internal structural issues, so inconsistent messaging, poor execution, assumptions of community wants and needs, and siloed departments that have slow processes. And finally, there was a mention of effective strategies, so the barriers around those, and some of our greatest challenges come with clear, timely and action-driven communication and actions that can be hard to cut through the noise and to build trust through our communities. So that was question 1. Panel, does that resonate with you? Is that what you're feeling? With lots of nodding. Excellent. They're keeping me to time now. No one's going to chime in. With question 2, we had some of those keys to success. And interestingly for this question, 46% of responses included the word community, which I love to see that community was the theme of our success. Amy, hello, sorry.
Oh, no, you can keep continuing. I was just going to comment on that actually
great.
in terms of the successful engagement. And Raylene spoke about it before, which was the idea of that local knowledge, and that is sustainable. And by community being involved, that's how we're going to have better outcomes. And I wanted to briefly mention an example of that. So in the emergency preparedness and disaster management space, we had a community event in a local community. We brought everyone together. One of the issues was the challenges around the evacuation centre not being accessible for people with disability and not having the supports that may be required. And a day service provider put their hand up and said, hey, I've got an accessible site where if we work together and form a partnership, if you have people with disability presenting at your evacuation centre in times of need, let's transport them to our day service and overnight respite. And that's just a little example of what collaboration and community can bring in this sense as well. I just wanted to make sure I passed that on. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Amy.
Thanks, Amy. Oh, I just wanted to add as well, I can see the word community in there quite a bit, Brooke. And it's really good to see. I guess one of the successful words that isn't on there is a simple thing like a barbecue or a coffee can really bring people together. And we just don't know what we don't know. So working with community to find that information out is a key success or a key component to making community engagement successful.
I was
Thanks
really
for
surprised.
that, Carmen.
I was really surprised to not see food end up in there because I know that would have been the first one that I had. But some of the other keys through those words, we had collaboration and co-design, so working together, empowerment and local leadership, so communities leading preparedness and making informed decisions for themselves, trust and relationship, mutual relationships, listening and genuine connection that create strong, resilient communities. Lots of mentions around clear and actionable communication, which I think is great to see that mirrored from our challenges then down into our successes as well. Inclusion and accessibility, culturally tailored community-led approaches, sustainable engagements, that ongoing presence, patience and understanding that strengthening long-term relationships is what builds resilience. And the last one that came through in this question was that impact of behaviour change. So community driving solutions to lead increased preparedness and awareness for safer outcomes. So that was really, really exciting. And then for our last question, which was around the biggest obstacle, does someone want to talk over me? Please do. For the biggest obstacle, things that we've seen across both those successes and our struggles in community engagement were trust and credibility, so mistrust information and negative experiences that present barriers to further engagement, apathy and fatigue, many communities disengage, which were directly impacted, leading to complacency and low participation rates. There was resource and capability constraints, so limited staffing time, and having the time to make meaningful engagement can be challenging. We had geographic and cultural barriers. So in Queensland in particular, I think Jules touched on it earlier, we've got vast distances, we've got language differences, perception of risk in the changing environment. I know we hear it time and time again, it's never flooded here, that doesn't happen here, we won't do that here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's true. There's seasonal populations and diverse values that require tailored approaches in terms of managing those obstacles. Competing priorities, people face daily struggles and may prioritise risk awareness and juggle multiple issues until it becomes urgent for them. Lots of competing priorities, siloed approaches and power dynamics. So I think that's lots coming through from our participants themselves. So that lack of coordination, rigid policies and command-driven cultures that limit the effectiveness of collaboration. And then finally, their communication gaps, so reaching the right people at the right time with clear, actionable messages.
Wow, that was some great insights that are coming through from that. We are at nearing the end of our timeline here. What we can do is we'll put all that information together and be able to share some insights coming from. Just in the last couple of minutes, feel free to pop in your chat there, what you've learnt today and what communities you're looking at engaging in the future. A bit of a takeaway thought: imagine what we could all do if we all put our heads together as a national community engagement network. So in conclusions, that's all we have time for today. But I'd like to again thank the panel members for coming along and participating today. It certainly provided us with a lot to think about. On behalf of AFAC and Queensland Fire Department, thank you to Stewart and Heaton Clothing Company for the sponsorship, sponsoring the masterclass, and thank you all for joining for us today. And as you leave this call, you'll be taken to a short survey. We will use this information to ensure professional development events programs continues to meet your needs. It's been a pleasure to host this afternoon. Until next time, stay safe and farewell.